Now, the reason why this particular paper, this course is there in the fourth semester is because in the fourth semester you are finally supposed to be making the dissertation, putting it together. The assumption is that in the third semester you have worked on the title and all that. The title of your research is supposed to be finalized in the third semester. So I'm assuming that was all done. And your titles of your research, etc., is done. The preliminary thinking has been done. So you know broadly what it is that you are researching. Okay. Now, in this semester, you are supposed to actually put it together, put the whole thing together. It normally takes about a year for a good paper to come out. It takes a while before you can, if you've got your thinking right, then you can do it in maybe 2 months or 3 months. But otherwise, starting from scratch, it takes some time for the entire research paper to come through. Now, you are supposed to only write 10,000 words of this. So it is not such a big deal. You can actually do this quite very, very fast. If you look at your syllabus, just 10,000 words. The total deal is 10,000 words. Now, the idea behind putting this paper here, this course here, there are two courses in the fourth semester. One is Perspectives and Communication Theory, and the other is Social Science Research, which I think Devata will be teaching. Or she must have already started or whatever. Now, what I'm looking at, what is my contribution to this dissertation that you're making? I'll help you put together the review of literature along with the theoretical framework. That is what we are doing. So when we say perspectives on communication theory, you have already studied communication theory in the first semester. You have applied it to some extent in television studies, in film studies, in ethics, and reporting. And I'm just saying, in media criticism, media economics. You have applied it. You have seen what happens. And then those of you who took political communication or PR theory in practice or whatever specializations you took, I'm assuming that you have gone deeper into the whole question of applying that particular theoretical framework into that particular specialization, right? So intercultural, whatever you must have. Now the question is to demonstrate, to be able to actually show other people that if you have done your masters, demonstrate to me that you are a master of this subject. So demonstrate it to me. How can you demonstrate it? By doing a research. And when you relook at a topic, at some issue within that domain, and you have your own my research. So the point here is that now you are supposed to demonstrate that you have a mastery over whatever subject you are talking about, and that can only be shown by writing something on this. That you do some research, take a small area of study, see how it works in the real world, and then be able to demonstrate that I can think about this topic. And that is what this research is all about. So what we will do is that I will discuss with you perspectives on communication theory. Okay. But your challenge your challenge is to have your topics in your head and to see which of these perspectives are you taking. Okay. So you will be taking a perspective. When you do your research, whatever your research topics are, you are taking a perspective. You are taking a philosophical perspective, a practical perspective, an applicable perspective, some perspective you are taking about something to do in communication, media, journalism. Only three areas. There is nothing else that you are doing. So within the domain of communication, media, and journalism, you are going to take some perspective. As we discuss this, and you find that yes, this is a perspective that I'm taking, right? Then you're going to require to justify that perspective. Who else has looked at it from this perspective? What has been studied? What has been seen? And then, therefore, ultimately, you have to ask yourself that, okay, so what are you going to justify? Right? That is what you're going to do. So the plan is, normally this is what my plan is. So see how it works for you, because last time I did this online and it worked. Offline also it works. But now with you, your batch, I don't know how you are going to think. So I leave it to you how you're going to do this. What we will do is that for an hour, we will discuss the perspectives as they appear. And then in the next hour, though you can, one of the easiest way to do it would be to produce an Excel sheet with your names and your topics in front. And then we can start from the top, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like that. And I will actually do the review of literature for you here on the screen so that you see what is it that you need to review. Where are you going to get your theory from? Where are you going to get your research papers from, etc. And then, of course, I'm not able to record this for you, but I mean, I can, you can share the link and all that. You can do it. It's not such a difficult thing. So I can then demonstrate to you on this online that, okay, this is how your review of literature will move like this. So you have got a 40-mark internal component for this particular course, like all other courses. That 40-mark component is your review of literature. Okay, so you are going to get your 40 marks for the quality of your review of literature. Okay, I think I have already shared with you earlier a rubric on the basis of which your review of literature will be evaluated. I'll share it again so that you don't have, I'm sure some of you have a copy, just share it on the group. And that will be the rubric on the basis of which we will evaluate the review of literature. Okay. Now, today we are in the last day of January. So, by the 10th of March, March 10th, I will expect you to put together your review of literature in a document file and put all of these reviews of literature in a drive and share the drive with me. That's all. Right? So March 10th is your deadline for putting together the review of literature. Yeah, Mritika, you have a question?
No, sir, that's fine.
So you understood this? So March 10th, you are expected to finish your review of literature. Okay. So organize yourself accordingly. All right. What you are supposed to do is make a list of all students and their topics in an Excel sheet. That is the easiest thing to do. And depending on how many of you are there, every day when we have these lectures, the one half of that lecture, 1 hour of that session will be to deal with your review of literature. Okay, so I'll share the space with you, and you can then either record it, or I'm sure you all can record whatever is happening here in terms of the screen, and then you will get all those links, etc. You can see it, and we can have a discussion on what can be going into the review of literature. You can make it faster. So if you organize this properly, you are all going to get this done fast. Right? If you are going to be taking it lightly and going it in aram se karenge, then probably your turn will come on the 8th of March or something like that, and you will have only 2 days to put together that review of literature. So I leave it to you how you want to do this. So 1 hour I will deal with this presentation. I'll share the entire thing with you today, right now. After this lecture is over, I'll share the whole thing to you. So those of you who want to study from the presentation itself and from the book itself and from the text itself, just go ahead and study. You don't have to sit for this 1 hour nonsense. It's fine. If you have any questions, you can ask them. And then the next hour, we will deal only with your research topics. Okay? So that your review of literature is done with by the 10th of March. Right? That is the game. So let us see what we can do now. Okay. So perspectives on communication theory. One of the starting points.
Sir, can you let in Anup? And there are several others.
Yeah, but I don't see them. Where are they? Hold on. No, I don't see anybody. Just ask them to join again.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. I will ask them.
So when we think of perspectives on communication theory, one of the basic things which come to our mind is making communication. Right? Absolutely basic making of communication. But let us first look at communication theory itself. And you have already done with this, so it should not be very difficult for you to relate on this. Communication, when we say that we are dealing with making of communication, we know that we are making communication, which means that it is a process, it is something that is to be done. Correct? So we are dealing with the making of communication. And now let us see how do we make communication happen. One of the first things that will strike you when we say communication is happening is that communication is relationality. Right? We build into a relationship. It is a process of relating. So our relationships with people, with objects, with media content, with each other. See, so we have got lots of issues here with respect to communication because we are constantly dealing with. Just give me a second. We are constantly dealing with this whole business of relationship, right? We are constantly dealing with this, and when we communicate, we form a relationship, right? It is not a, so communication is not merely transferring information or disseminating information. It is weaving and reweaving of visible and invisible webs. Okay. So everything from our language to our sound to the way we look to the way we appear and all of this, it is a weaving and a reweaving because the weave breaks. Right? So this it is a literal thing. मतलब जब आप लोगों ने वो गाने सुने होंगे कि वो क्या प्रेम का धागा कच्चा and all that. I'm sure all of you have heard those interesting Hindi songs, Hindi film songs. So you will relate to that. That because it is a thread, it is like a thread. It is a weaving, and it can just break because of some doubt that I have or I suspect something. Something can like that can happen, and the damn thing can just break. Right? So when we look at this whole question, we know it is a weaving. All right. Now, whether we are looking at Western philosophy or whether we Eastern philosophy or whatever, at the core of this communication business are signs. We use signs. Right? So, chinna, variety of signs is what we use. And these signs occur, they accumulate meanings by their transaction. So when I make a sign to you, when you make a sign to me, within us, there is a very interesting language developing. You know? There are two languages where this can be understood very well. One is Malayalam, and the other, I mean, I am familiar with Malayalam and I am familiar with Urdu. So, those people who are writing Malayalam, or in fact, even those people who are writing Tamil, those two languages are very interesting in that sense. The script, as you learn the Malayalam language has the maximum number of alphabets. In Indian languages, it has the maximum number of alphabets. There are subtle things which you do to the language by which meanings are formed. And a point arises between two writers. So if I am writing to Anushka or Jeremy or whatever, in Malayalam, and they are writing to me in Malayalam, a point appears, and it is a very interesting, very well documented thing, that you can actually drop some of the alphabets and some of the ikar and ukar and all that, and it makes sense. If somebody else read that, they'll say, "Kya likha hai? Kuch samajh nahi aa raha hai." but that other person can read the entire sentence. Because you can just drop. Nahi, in Hindi it is not possible, because Hindi or Marathi, that Devanagari or Bengali, you have to write that whole thing. I am unable to write here, so I can't really. If I could just write Malayalam, I could show you. So let us say I want to write Matrubhumi in Malayalam. So if you find how to write, I don't know if so any of you writes Malayalam, but if you write Matrubhumi in Malayalam, because I can't write, no, imagine writing on the whiteboard. I mean, that's quite a challenge, but let's sort of, see it in this way. So, oh, wow. Right. So this, thank you, Swarna. This you have written wonderful. So ye jo ma hai, this is this first alphabet, this first sign is ma, and this half circle, like an ulta C, that is the akar. Na? And then you have got this as the, and this, this is that ukar here at the bottom. Matra, that ukar is there, and then gu, and then me, so this is the me and this is the ikar. Now, what happens is that what Malayali writers do, and this is a characteristic of Malayali writers and Urdu writers, okay? They drop. So, they will drop this a, or they will drop this u, and they join the damn thing completely. So ma, tra, bha, ma. So they'll join it, and the other guy knows you are talking of Matrubhumi. This is something very interesting in Malayalam. You should look up the studies which have been done on this. It is very fascinating, okay, because the language has developed that way. And the same thing is with Urdu. Those of you who might have studied Urdu, उसमें वो जो dots देखते हो नीचे alif होते हैं, right? So वो जो सारे dots हैं या lines हैं, two writers in Urdu, when writing to each other, they just drop all that. And they seem to know कि ये क्या लिखा है. But a third person, if you look at that, it tries to read that, वो उसकी समझ में नहीं आएगा. ओके, वो कि ये क्या लिखा है. हिंदी या मराठी के लेखक ऐसा नहीं करते, गुजराती में ऐसा नहीं करते, बंगाली में ऐसा नहीं करते, राइट? बट इन मलयालम एंड उर्दू this is a very interesting behavior where they just drop the vowels. In fact, they may drop even the main words also. They just drop it and you just figure it out. वो एक alphabet लिखेंगे and see people seem to know ये क्या है. Two people seem to know. This is a very interesting behavior. Okay, your generation has done this with emojis, right? You have done this very interesting thing with the Roman script, right? And you do this, no? And you seem to figure out ये क्या लिखा है. So for a person of my generation, even now when you do this, I don't remember ये क्या है. I just know that this is, laughter or something like that. But then I have to Google and then, laughing my ass out, ऐसा बोल रहा. Okay, but it doesn't, this is not something which will come to me. So supposing one of you cracks a joke, I don't see myself writing LMAO. I don't see myself writing that. Okay, I'll write ha ha or something like that, but I just cannot write this. ये मेरे दिमाग में आएगा ही नहीं. But you are doing this, right? So you write something like this. It comes to your head. This doesn't come to my head. It doesn't come. So if I were to write, to be able to write something like this, I would require, I think, some special training for myself before I'm able to get my brain to respond in this fashion. What I'm trying to get you to understand is that science is a very important tool of communication. Okay? And it formed, that lol is a big one. Yeah. So if, what happens is that it was believed that there is a lot of literature on this, that how did people come up with science? And I think I did discuss with you this whole question of window. Media criticism में शायद या फिर film या television कहीं पे, window. It actually combines two words which are window. Now, how did these words come? इसको ऐसा ही क्यों बोलते हैं? या ऐसा क्यों है? We don't know. And there is a degree of arbitrariness. Right? You are familiar with this fact that there is a degree of arbitrariness to our understanding of making these signs. कोई नियंत्रण नहीं है, right? हेतु नहीं है, बस इसको ऐसा कहते हैं, that's all. So I mean one of the very interesting mysterious things about human beings, हमारे नाम होते हैं, संजय. Why did we even think of calling this person Sanjay? And then you know what kind of names people have got. नारायण, विवेक, ऐसा कुछ कुछ नाम होते हैं, और उसके पूरे बिहेवियर में ऐसा कुछ भी नजर नहीं आता कि ये ट्रू टू योर नेम, बट वो माँ बाप पता नहीं क्या सोच के इसको संजय बुलाते हैं. और फिर मैं भी एकदम से, मतलब कोई कहेगा उससे अरे संजय, तो मेरे कान खड़े हो जाते हैं. मैं पूरे किती गर्दी असू दे आणि कोणी संजय म्हटलं की मी लगेच कान वर करून ऐकायला, ऐसा रेस्पॉन्स तैयार हो जाते. क्या ये अजीब सा बिहेवियर? दिस इज द साइंस and it is to do with relationality. You get the sense of communication as relationality. So are signs naturally emerging? So I did discuss with you the Vakyapadiya. Let me give you the rationale behind this. कि ये कैसे सोचा गया है इसके ऊपर. I am living in a world. ठीक है, I'm living in a world. The world interacts with me. I interact with the world. वो जो famous गजल है ना, हम हैं तो खुदा भी है. Right? So this entire world, as long as I am alone, I don't have nobody to share with nobody to share this world with. I don't have to do anything with this world. I just have to partake. उपभोग घ्यायचा है. Right? जो भी इधर होगा, I just have to partake. But if I have to, if there is another, that word is very interesting, an other. If there is an other, apart from me, if there is another, then that I assume that my world and that person's world is the same. That person also assumes, उसका world और मेरा world is the same. दोनों एक ही है ना. We are sitting here in the same world, so एक ही world होगा. But we know from our own experience that if I am an 80-year-old man, if I am an 80-year-old woman, if I am an 80-year-old man, if I am an 80-year-old woman, if I am an 18-year-old man, if I am an 18-year-old woman, if I am from Mexico and you are from China, then the same world is seen, heard very differently. We already know that. Now when you go and talk about it, what happens? Do you really describe your world, or do you create another world for that person? Are you getting the picture here? So, in my description of my world, so you know the word here, अपने जो संस्कृति में अपना जो word है वो ये है, ब्रह्म. So मेरा एक ब्रह्म है, right? मैं एक ब्रह्म में जीता हूँ, मेरा एक ब्रह्म है, तुम्हारा भी एक ब्रह्म है. And then I have got an understanding of my Brahma reality. I have got an understanding. You also have an understanding of your Brahma. Now we share. We compare notes. Okay? Do we understand each other's Brahma completely? No, not possible. You don't understand my Brahma. I don't understand your Brahma. Then what happens when we communicate? What happens when we communicate? So I express my Brahma to you, and you express your Brahma to me. Does this mean that now my Brahma is yours and your Brahma is mine? No. Because Brahma, you can see, is so complex. You know, our understanding of our Brahma is so complex. Our relationship with that Brahma is so complex. Then what happens? Those signs, right? वो जो चिन्ह है हमारे, वो जो चिन्ह है, those signs, they create, because we are exchanging them, they create a Brahma of your own. So मेरा एक ब्रह्म है, तुम्हारा एक ब्रह्म है, और तुम्हारे और मेरे बीच में हमारे कम्युनिकेशन की वजह से एक ब्रह्म तैयार हुआ. ये तीसरा ब्रह्म तैयार हुआ. ऐसे कई सारे ब्रह्म हैं, कई सारे रियलिटीज हैं, यथार्थ, राइट? और when we began to investigate this, मेरे में और उस कुत्ते में क्या फर्क है? कुछ नहीं. वो जिया है, मैं भी जीऊंगा, वो मरेगा, मैं भी मरूंगा, उसको भूख लगती है, मुझे भी भूख लगती है, राइट? सो व्हेन यू लुक एट दीज फैक्टर्स, आहार, निद्रा, मैथुन, सॉरी, ये सब हम में एक जैसा है। मैं क्या, बिल्ली क्या, कबूतर क्या, कुत्ता क्या, हम सब एक जैसे हैं। हम सब आहार के पीछे दौड़ते हैं, हम सब निद्रा के पीछे दौड़ते हैं, हम सब में भय है, हम सब मैथुन के पीछे दौड़ते हैं, सब ऐसे ही, कोई अलग कुछ नहीं, हम सब एक जैसे। तो मेरे में और उस रास्ते के कुत्ते में कोई अंतर, मेरा ब्रह्म और उस कुत्ते का ब्रह्म एक जैसा है। मेरा और तुम्हारा ब्रह्म एक स्तर पर एक जैसा है। एट वन लेवल माय ब्रह्म एंड योर ब्रह्म इज नॉट डिफरेंट, इट्स द सेम. So can we conceptualize a Brahma that is everybody's and a one Brahma that is mine? एक मेरा ब्रह्म और एक big Brahma, right? This entire thing was conceptualized as this is a very interesting word, शब्द ब्रह्म. एक ब्रह्म हमारा केवल शब्दों की वजह से है. वो शब्द निकाल दिए जाए तो ब्रह्म ही नहीं रहेगा. You understand? So there is a tree outside this department. एक अपने क्लास के बाहर एक ट्री, एक पेड़ है, वहां पे पेड़ मुझे दिख रहा है, राइट? सपोजिंग तुम लोग कभी क्लास में आए ही नहीं, जहां मैं बैठा हूं वहां तुम लोग कभी बैठे ही नहीं, लेकिन मैं तुमसे कह रहा हूं कि यहाँ पर राइट साइड में खिड़की है, खिड़की, एक खिड़की है ऑन माय राइट, मेरे दाहिने हाथ पर एक खिड़की है. खिड़की के बाहर मैं देख रहा हूं और वहां पर मुझे कुछ पेड़ नजर आ रहे हैं. आई कैन सी ट्रीज फ्रॉम अ विंडो विच इज ऑन माय राइट. ये समझने के लिए I just described to you my Brahma. Now to understand this, what do you have to know? You have to know दाहिना हाथ क्या होता है, पता तो होना चाहिए ना. ये क्या होती है भाई, खिड़की. और फाइनली ये पेड़ क्या होता है, तुमको पता होना चाहिए. अगर तुमको ये तीन चीजें पता है, दाहिना हाथ, खिड़की और पेड़, अगर ये तीनों चीजें पता है तो मेरे ब्रह्म का एक पार्ट तुम समझ गए. अच्छा, तुम्हारी खिड़की के बाहर पेड़ हैं, ओके, क्या समझा भाई, देखा है तूने, नहीं देखा, और फिर क्या समझा, अब जो हमने बनाया वो हमारे बीच का शब्द ब्रह्म है, राइट? अब कुछ लोगों का शब्द ब्रह्म बड़ा फंडामेंटल होता है. भूख लगी है, खाना खाओ, नींद आई है, सो जाओ, प्यास लगी है, पानी पियो, सिंपल सा होता है. कुछ लोगों का ब्रह्म बड़ा कॉम्प्लेक्स होता है, इस देश का क्या होगा, इस दुनिया का क्या होगा, मेरा भविष्य कैसा है. शब्द ब्रह्म बड़ा बड़ा है, उसके शब्द ही अलग होंगे, क्योंकि वो ब्रह्म का कॉन्सेप्चुअलाइजेशन ही बहुत गलत कर रहा है. जैसा मैंने कहा, कुछ लोगों का ब्रह्म बड़ा छोटा होता है, वो कहते भाई अगर भूख, अभी नींद आ रही है यार, फैल जाओ. ये सब समझने के लिए जो शब्द ब्रह्म का उपयोग वो कर रहा है, द साइंस दैट दैट पर्सन इज यूजिंग आर वेरी फंडामेंटल. छोटी सी साइंस इज यूजिंग वेरी फंडामेंटल साइंस. But some people can ask very complex questions, and they do deal with those complex questions. What will happen to this humanity? What will happen in the future? What will happen to Earth? They think those things. Now the kind of words you're going to require will be really big. You can't, discuss what will happen to Earth, what will happen to humanity with words where you are making maybe, vada sambar. Those words के साथ तुम दुनिया सबका क्या होगा, ये तुम्हारा शब्द ब्रह्म थोड़ा प्रॉब्लमॅटिक है, राइट? दिस इज हाउ द वाक्यपदीय टॉक्स अबाउट द शब्द ब्रह्म. सो द्याट तुमच्यातले कोणी ज्ञानेश्वरी वाचली असेल किंवा वाचायची असेल, हे शब्द ब्रह्म अशेष, दॅट इज हाउ ज्ञानेश्वरा ही डिस्क्राइब्स गणपती. ही सेज दिस इज शब्द ब्रह्म अशेष. Without nothing is remaining. Once it is expressed, when once Ganesha or Ganapati is expressed, अभिव्यक्त जब हो जाता है वो, then it is like the Shabda Brahma where nothing is to be expressed more. कुछ और express करने जैसा नहीं रह जाता. Right? This is what he talks about. And I hope you understand what I mean when I say science. There is a lot of discussion on this. So there is a French scholar, Ferdinand Saussure. उनके यूरोप में He's called in Europe, he's called the father of linguistics, European linguistics. So when you look at his work, what is he doing? He is essentially looking at just this. ये जो वर्ड है साइंस, ये उस वस्तु से निकलता है या मैं उसके ऊपर फोर्स करता हूं? डू आई force my impression on that thing, or does the thing tell me, call me this? You understand the difference? So when I say that is a tree, have I asked the tree, does it like being called a tree? Have I asked the pigeon? कबूतर को मैंने पूछा क्या कभी कि मैं तुमको कबूतर बुलाता हूं, तुम अपने आप को क्या बुलाते हो? कबूतर से नहीं पूछा. But we seem to understand, right? So these are signs which create this thing, and there is a question of whether it is a natural order or whether it is a imposed order on the world. So there is a reality on the world out there. There is a reality, right? And I'm living in that reality. Once I create signs, do I impose my order on that reality, or does the reality express itself? Okay, it has been a constant tussle for this whole question of science. All right. So the idea that science represented some naturally ordered reality, मतलब आइडिया ये था कि एक बार आपने साइंस बना दिए एंड वी शेयर इट अमंग्स ईच अदर, देन एवरीबॉडी अंडरस्टैंड्स. ओके, इट वाज अज्यूम पेड़ पेड़ होता है और क्या होता है. मैंने कहा ना तुमसे मेरे खिड़की को पेड़, लेकिन पेड़ कौन सा है? जामुन का है, आम का है, पीपल का है, गुलमोहर का है, कौन सा पेड़ है? Now your understanding of reality will be better, no? It will be more sharper, see, because मैंने सिर्फ कहा पेड़ है, लेकिन ये मौसम कौन सा है? अब बसंत आएगा, राइट? अपना आई डोंट नो, आई डोंट नो अगर आप लोगों को याद है, आई डिस्कस दिस, अपना जो वैलेंटाइंस डे, तुम में से कितनों की हिम्मत होगी उस तरह का वैलेंटाइन डे सेलिब्रेट नहीं, मुझे पता नहीं, बट मार्च को अपना वैलेंटाइंस डे है, बसंत पंचमी है 5 मार्च को. एंड इफ यू हैव एवर सीन द फिल्म उत्सव, देन यू विल अंडरस्टैंड कि बसंत को सेलिब्रेट कैसे किया जाता था. मुझे नहीं लगता तुम में से किसी की हिम्मत होगी उस तरह का बसंत सेलिब्रेट करने की. हमारे समाज की उतनी क्षमता अब चली गई, अब नहीं. हम लोग वैलेंटाइंस डे सेलिब्रेट कर सकते हैं लेकिन बसंत नहीं कर पाएंगे. एंड वी हैव वेरी इंटरेस्टिंगली कन्वर्टेड दैट बसंत उत्सव, उसको हमने बहुत बढ़िया तरीके से एक अलग चिन्हों में बांध दिया और हम उसको कहते हैं सरस्वती पूजा. मतलब यूं समझिए कि बढ़िया मुर्गा बना है, मछली बनी है, बकरा बना है, राइट? ऐसा हम लोग सेलिब्रेशन कर रहे थे और फिर हमने उसको कन्वर्ट करके सूजी का हलवा बना दिया. तो जो ट्रांजिशन करना पड़ेगा ना, वैसा है वो बसंत उत्सव से लेकर सरस्वती पूजा तक. Why did we change those signs? Because ये signs है, they are signs. How did we change them? Why did we change the signs? Right? So I'm sure आप लोग अब so called होली सेलिब्रेट करोगे. That same question again कि जब आप सेलिब्रेट करते हो तो सेलिब्रेट क्या करते हो, क्या सेलिब्रेट करते हो? क्योंकि अगर होली सेलिब्रेट कर रहे हो तो तुम असल में ये सेलिब्रेट कर रहे हो. अंडरस्टैंड कि हम लोग बात कर रहे हैं चिन्हों की. तो तुम सेलिब्रेट ये कर रहे हो, होलिका का दहन से सेलिब्रेट कर रहे हो. होलिका नाम की एक माइथोलॉजिकल है कैरेक्टर जिसको जला दिया है, महिला है. तो दोज ऑफ यू हु कॉल योरसेल्फ फेमिनिस्ट एंड ऑल दैट, व्हाई आर वी सेलिब्रेटिंग द सेटिंग ऑन फायर ऑफ अ फीमेल? इसकी गलती क्या है? What conflict is she representing? What is she a sign of? अगर वो चिन्ह तुम्हारी समझ में आ गया, तब तुम्हारी समझ में आएगा कि होली सेलिब्रेट करने का रिलेशन क्या है. With what are you relating to? Alright? So जब तुम वो लकड़ी वकड़ी लगा के उसको आग लगाओगे तो तुम जला क्या रहे हो? चिन्ह क्या है? किस चीज का चिन्ह है? वहां पर जो कुछ भी रखोगे वो किस चीज का चिन्ह है? So there are lots of interesting ways in which we impose our ideas on reality around us. Okay, so वो जो 5 मार्च है, जो बसंत उत्सव है, right? And उसका रंग होता है पीला और तुम्हारे वैलेंटाइंस डे का रंग होता है लाल. ऐसा क्यों है? ये चिन्ह किस चीज का चिन्ह है? Right? So to be able to understand this, post-structuralists, what they began to say is कि नहीं, चिन्ह केवल उसमें से नहीं निकलते, चिन्ह समाज या व्यवस्था भी अपनी उसके ऊपर डालता है. Right? So when two people are talking about a tree or a tiger, are they talking about a tiger? Are they talking about a tree? Or are they creating through this talking a tree between them? So मैंने कहा कि इसके बाहर पेड़ है और तुमने समझा कि खिड़की के बाहर पेड़ है, पर खिड़की, पेड़, दाहिना हाथ, ये वास्तव में क्या है? In reality, what is it? It will depend on what is our relationship. If our relationship is one of doubt, ये आदमी झूठ बोलता है, तो तुम क्या करोगे? अच्छा खिड़की है तुम्हारे राइट में, अच्छा कितनी बड़ी है? बड़ी है, कांच है क्या उसमें? Why are you asking me all this? You are asking me all this because you don't believe when I say खिड़की है. अच्छा पेड़ है, कौन सा पेड़ है? कितने पेड़ है? दिख रहा है तुझे या ऐसे अंदाजा लगा रहा है? तुझे मालूम है पेड़ है या ऐसे ही बोल रहा है? Why are you asking all this? Because our relationship is not based on trust. It is based on some kind of a question. You are not sure whether I can see, whether मुझे दिखता भी है, ये तुमको भरोसा नहीं, या मुझे सुनाई देता है, तुम्हें भरोसा नहीं. When our relationship is entrenched, right, then it completely changes the dynamics, right? So for instance, it's an experience which I came through, which I can just sort of share with you. I remember it was a full moon night. I was in Mumbai, right? And that person I was in love with was in Bangalore. We couldn't meet obviously because I am here and she's there. So what do? We shared poems on the moon. Right? We shared poems on the moon. So I wrote to her, can you see this moon? So she said, yes, I can see the moon. And it was the same moon, right? Because we are in the same kind of latitude. So I am in Mumbai, she is in Bangalore. And we're looking at the same moon. But are we looking at the same moon? If we assume that we're looking at the same moon, that's fine. But is it the same side of the moon? Is it the same moon we are looking at, or is it a different moon? This was what we wrote all night to each other. All right. Why could we now, if you caught hold of those poems, would you understand those poems? I don't know. If you were to catch hold of those pieces of paper, they were not pieces of paper, they were mobile phones, and there was SMS at that time, no WhatsApp. So very expensive doing this kind of romantic nonsense at that time. So we were doing SMSs, and you could only send so much text, because if the text increased, then it became 2 SMSs. That was the time I'm talking about. So I'm writing SMSs to her and she's writing SMSs to me. And we are talking about this full moon which both of us can see. Is it the same moon? Is it the same night? Or is it that between us, we created a full moon night? If you understand this, now understand, मैंने भी news देखी, तुमने भी news देखी. Now we are talking about that news. Are we talking about the same news or are we talking about different news? Yeah. So I listen to the same, I read the same newspaper, you have read the same newspaper, and yet, are we talking about the same reality or are we creating another one? So words, signs, symbols, they impose our own idea on reality. And that is something which communication does. Correct? So as you see this perspective, what do you come? So when there is an overarching system or structure within which we operate, right? So when I said that there is a tree out there, what is our relationship will determine whether we agree or disagree, on the nature of the tree, the role that the tree is placing on this, you know. So at one point, the irritation can get so much that no, I don't want to talk to this anymore, because the more I look at the moon, the more I realize that you are far away. So I could like to throw something at that moon and knock it down, because it is telling me that between you and that person, there is a bloody moon. I don't even want that moon between us. But there is no way I can meet because you are so far away. That is what we mean when we say that there is an overarching system. Right? And that is what we are talking about when we say that no marriage can be summed up in a sentence or a paragraph. Because no relationship can be summed up in a paragraph. If I tell you, okay, in 150 words, describe your relationship with your mother, if you really have dealt with that relationship, you will find that it is possible. You will end up describing some aspect of it. The entire relationship is very complex. If I tell you to describe in 150 words your relationship with yourself, remember, you are the person you have smelt the most, tasted the most, seen the most, heard the most, touched the most. The most compared to anything else in this world. Describe, no? Nahi hota. Because it is such a complex relationship. Why is it complex? Because there is this element of relationality. Okay. So, yeah. So what does communication do? Firstly, there are two elements, A and B. They communicate. When they communicate, they reconstitute the entities. So when A communicates with B and with B communicates with A, both A and B change with respect to each other. They change. What else changes? The relationship also changes. So the more you communicate, the more you change, and the more the relationship changes, and the other person also changes. Yeah. The difficulties in long-term relationships, like marriages, parenthood. Imagine the kind of relationships your parents have with you, or you may be having with your siblings. I have had a relationship with my mother now. I'll be now 55. So for 55 years, I've had a relationship with my mother. Do you think it is the same kind of relationship? It can't be, because we have communicated. She has communicated to me, I have communicated to her, and every time I communicated, I changed, she changed, the relationship changed. And that change is something which constitutes that communication. That change is the communication. If nothing changed, I am the same guy, she is the same person, relationship is the same. What will be the conclusion? No communication happens. No communication happens. If communication happens, it reconstitutes the entities that are related. So everything that exists is in itself nothing more than a particularly and perspectively constituted set of relationships. If that tree exists, then to me, if that tree exists, if I'm conscious of the tree out there, how many of you are conscious of the trees out there? I think I did discuss this, maybe I did. You will find that there are some people around you who have a relationship with trees and plants, and they notice, oh, now it is this flower. This flower comes in this season. Oh, that tree is this tree. And they are like a living, walking encyclopedia. They keep telling you, this is this tree, this came from Africa, this is not an indigenous tree, this tree looks like from the outside. They're constantly doing that. And they're able to identify birds and insects. Some people are very good at insects. They see insects everywhere. And they're able to identify them. They'll say, ये ऐसा है, ये वैसा है. And मेरी आंखों से तो नजर ही नहीं आता, but उसको नजर आता है. I have this friend Mangesh Karandikar and my former wife Mumbai. They identify birds. So Mangesh will suddenly go, "Arey, look at that bird," and this is what I have. I can't see anything. I can just see some leaves. So I say, Mangesh, hold on. Is the bird still there? All right. What is its color? So I don't look. I ask. Then Mangesh describes, or Mumbai describes. It is green. It is this, got a beak like this, and then sometimes I'm able to see the tree, and I'm always amazed. I mean, ये रास्ता देख के क्यों नहीं चलते, पेड़ पे क्यों देख रहा है? But he sees, she also sees, oh the tree, वो दिखता है उसको, वो पेड़ दिखता है उसको, दिखता है वो ये पंछी और वो पंछी. My daughter and my wife, now my wife, they have this very interesting way of looking at trees. They see trees and then they identify. I can't believe this. They look at a tree and say, oh, this is this tree. They also know the bloody name of that tree. And then they'll say these flowers at this time and this. So most of my knowledge about trees and birds have come from these characters. If they were not in my life, I don't know whether the tree would have existed in my life, whether I would have had a relationship with trees and birds and plants. You know, there was this student who came to our department, Gokte. I just remembered. He would look at insects. He could see insects everywhere. And he was almost like Roald Dahl. I don't know if anybody has read Roald Dahl. Has anybody read Roald Dahl? I was very fascinated by this author, Roald Dahl, because he talks of relationships with lizards and insects and spiders in his home, right? And he must have spent hours looking at them. But by the way he writes, you can make out कि ये घंटों बैठकर उस छिपकली का behavior देखता होगा, तब जाकर वो ऐसे लिख रहा है. Now these are very interesting people. Do you know people around you who notice people's earrings, people's eyes, people's skin, people's hair, नाक की लंबाई, होठों की चौड़ाई? लोग होते हैं जो अलग अलग चीजें देखते हैं. All of this is a perspective, correct? And this perspective is communicated. And when they communicate, it forms a relationship, right? It forms a relationship. This is what communication is. I want you to, I mean, I'm giving you examples which are in lived reality, but now extend this to people watching cinema. What kind of relationship are they in with cinema? What is the sign? What does that sign making mean to them? What does television content mean to them? What does WhatsApp mean to them? What does Facebook mean to them? Or what does a newspaper mean to them? You are all studying this. Remember, you are all studying some aspect of it. So are you looking at the relational aspect? The theoretical framework, is it relational? If it is, then you are going to look at these aspects. What is the relationship? So for instance, children are not socially discrete, right? The child can only exist if there is an adult. So my mother is still there. My father died last year. But as long as that category of people remain in my life, to some extent, I will remain a child. Right? So the way you will treat me, supposing you come to my house, the way you folks will treat me in terms of adult and the way my mother treats me is very different. Right? So although I am 55 years old, whatever, grown up man and all that, the way you look at me and the way my mother looks at me is very different. Because I am still, मैं कितना भी बड़ा हो जाऊंगा, वो मेरे से 30 साल आगे ही रहेगी. Because she is born before me, उतना ही चलेगी ना वो. So if I say I am 50, so she'll say I am 70. Yes. So if I say I am 60, she'll say I am 80. So खेल ही खत्म. Right? So I'll always remain a child. As long as that adult is there, my child is alive. But the moment all these characters in my life, imagine I'm 90-year-old. How many people will be there around me who are 91 or 92? Imagine if I'm 100 years old. How many people will be there who will be 101 or 102? My child will have no space. And if I behave like one, तुम्हारी पीढ़ी कहेगी क्या तुम आदमी, तुम साला 54 उम्र का आदमी, तो क्या बच्चे जैसा बिहेव करते हो, ऐसा तुम लोग मुझे गाली दोगे. just to share with you this idea. I mean, don't tell this to my daughter because she'll beat you up and she'll beat me out also. She has saved my name in her phone as Grown Up Baba. That is how she calls me. So I'm this person. Okay. Because apparently the child inside me is not dead yet, apparently. So she says, from the time I am watching you, you are continuing to grow. So you must be child, no? To grow from A to B, you must be at A, which is a lower state than B. So she calls me grown up Baba. Now this is something which is a very different way of looking at the same thing. Why? Because children are not socially discrete. There is no such thing as children. Okay? So, in fact, there is a very interesting conflict between Indian psychology and Western European psychology. Is that European psychology talks about developmental models. Right? So, if you look at the works of somebody like Erik Erikson, you will find that there are stages of development. Google karo isko, and you will find this. Stages of the 3 saal ka. So there is a very interesting guy in Russia, Vygotsky. These are all names which you can, of course, look at, Google karo. They talk about stages of development. In Indian psychology, we don't talk about stages of development. We talk about stages of consciousness. So if you read the works of Aurobindo, especially Aurobindo, because he has done a lot of work on this, you will find that we do not treat children as children. तुम बच्चे नहीं हो, क्योंकि बच्चे नाम का कोई चीज होता ही नहीं. There is no such thing called children. It is a nonsense idea. समझ में आया? It is a completely nonsense idea. There is no such thing called children. By calling you children, what do I do? Adult. मैं adult हूँ. ये मैं assert कर सकता हूँ क्योंकि तुझे बच्चा बोल रहा हूँ. But if I say कि नहीं तुम बच्चे नहीं हो, you are my equal. I am your equal. So that's it. There is no child. Then our relationship is going to be very different. Right? The communication is going to be very different. Okay? So remember that you must, I am sure that you have, in fact, your generation is very, this thing about it. You don't like it. उस तरह का क्या कहते हैं behavior, you don't like it. It is called शिष्ट. शिष्ट या फिर condescending. So if I am condescending to you, many of you will, in your generation, you will say, I don't want to talk to you. Because I treat you like a child. बच्चे जैसा बिहेव कर, तुम जैसे तुम छोटे भाई ना, I tap you on your head and I'll say अरे बेटा and all that. You feel क्या है ये? बेटा का है काम की बात करना. This is what your generation has come to that point. This is a very good thing. So remember that अपनी संस्कृति में there is no such thing called children. ये फालतू चीज है. ये वो यूरोपियन लोगों को ये सब धंधे सूझ रहे थे क्योंकि उनको युद्ध में जाना था ना, सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर को. रिमेंबर उनकी सारी साइकोलॉजी पहले महायुद्ध के बाद ही आती है. It starts from the first world war, not before that. So they are only looking at war. So why are they studying psychology? In the context of war. We did not have any such problem. So our psychology is very different from their psychology. So we do not look at children as a stage of development. Right? We look at children maybe as a stage of being. When somebody is very innocent. So Tukaram, Sant Tukaram or Sant Kabir were like children. What does that mean? They were innocent. They were so innocent like children. It doesn't matter how old they were or how learned they were like children, innocent. We look at characteristics. So I could be innocent like a child and I could be 100 years old. I could be very mature, very practical, very pragmatic, and I could be a 2-year-old. It's possible. That is what we mean when we say that children are not socially discrete. Right? They are not only under the care of their parents. The parents shape the child, right? But the parents are, the identity of the parents is because of the child. So I cannot be father without first having a child. Why am I father? Because there is some woman out there in this world who is willing to call me an adult and called herself a child. The moment she says, I'm not a child, I'm no longer father. Right? Now understand, you have studied constitution, law and all that. Once you are 18-year-old, okay, your childhood ends. Major hoga do. By definition, my adulthood also ends with respect to you. Okay, by definition, because we are both adults, what is the big deal? My adulthood will only have meaning if there is a child. Right? Once you are 18-year-old, legally, you are no longer a child. You understand? So once that happens, legally, between me and my daughter, there is no child anymore. Right? So understand this in a variety of ways when it comes to relations. So what are relationships? Relationships are multi-way streets. It is not a discrete static entity. It is a process of the interaction of forces. Interaction, communication, interaction, communication. And therefore, to be a human is to be related to all other human beings. Right? So if you are a human being, how can you be a human being? Only if you are related to other human beings. And then you have seen वो आदमी तो बिल्कुल जानवरों की तरह रहता है. करोलरी क्या है? अगर वो जानवरों की तरह रहता है तो मनुष्यों के बीच नहीं रहता होगा. Okay, so if you are a human being, you will be related to all other human beings, right? And when you look at this relationship, what do you see? That if I live a gender, मैं पुरुष हूं, ऐसा अगर मैं जीऊंगा तो पता चला कि रेस उस जेंडर को फ्रैक्चर कर देती है, कास्ट उसको फ्रैक्चर कर देती है, रीजन उसको फ्रैक्चर कर देती है. इफ आई से मैं इस जाति का हूं, then gender fractures it, race fractures it, religion fractures it. If I say मैं इस धर्म का हूं, then again, so you find that each one of these are essentially what? Communication. How do I communicate as a human being? To which human beings do I communicate? How do other human beings communicate to me? No? And that is what that whole relationship is. So the communication is about me and other human beings. Do I treat other people as human beings, same as me, या मैं उनको कुत्ते की तरह, so बेल बजा के लोगों को बुलाना, बेल बजा और आदमी दौड़ के आता है. बेल बजा के कौन दौड़ के आता है? कुत्ते दौड़ के आते हैं. राइट? सीटी बजाने पे कौन दौड़ के आता है? कबूतर, वो दौड़ के आते हैं. चील, कौवे, ये दौड़ के आते हैं. अगर मैंने सीटी बजाई और मनुष्य दौड़ के आया तो मनुष्य कौन है? कुत्ता है. मैंने उस आदमी को कुत्ता बना दिया. You understand the problem? So these are all very interesting aspects of signs and symbols, and they cause a relationship to happen. So अगर आप फौज में अगर आपने देखा या फिर ब्यूरोक्रेसी में आपने देखा, बेल बजा के इंसान को बुलाते हैं. What does the bureaucracy do? The bureaucracy converts, changes the human being into an animal. उसको जानवर बना देते हैं. उसके अंदर के मनुष्य को नहीं पहचानती ब्यूरोक्रेसी. उस आदमी को नहीं पहचानती. ब्यूरोक्रेसी तुम्हें नहीं देखेगी. ब्यूरोक्रेसी क्या देखेगी? तुम कौन हो? स्टूडेंट हो, आई कार्ड है तुम्हारे पास, हाँ, बोलो क्या चाहिए तुमको? मुझे ये चाहिए, ये लो. मुझे ये चाहिए, नहीं मिलेगा. दैट्स इट. वो ये सब नहीं पूछेगा कि तुम बीमार हो, तुम्हारे घर में कोई बीमार है, या तुम लेट आ, इस वजह से लेट आ गए, या समझ. वो ये ब्यूरोक्रेसी विल आस्क यू सम वेरी सिंपल. इट विल ट्रीट यू लाइक एन एनिमल. बेल बजाई, हाजिर होना. राइट? लेकिन एक मनुष्य जब मनुष्य से डील करता है, when humanity deals with humanity, it doesn't behave like this. सीटी बजाई आदमी आगे. ये कुत्ते करते हैं, बिल्ली करती है, कबूतर करते हैं, चील कौवे करते हैं, सीटी बजाई और आ गए. आदमी ऐसा नहीं होता. आदमी को नाम होते हैं, नामों के अर्थ होते हैं. राइट? वो संजय नाम के पीछे एक अर्थ है, जिसके पीछे भावना है, जिसके पीछे there is a meaning, there is a purpose, there is a history, there is behavior, there is action. All kinds of things are behind that simple sound, Sanjay. All right? So this is what it does, that it is fractured. Now, this is what leads us to this very important aspect of apprehension. Okay? And this is something which in human behavior, you see this, that there is a high level of anxiety about communication. Okay? Some of you must be thinking, I am a good public speaker. Right? Some of you must be thinking, well, I am a good public speaker, but not to this kind of public, that kind of public. Some of you would be saying, no, I'm not a good person. I get very nervous. I can talk one-to-one, but I cannot talk like that. I can write. Some of you will say, well, I can sing, but I cannot talk. Some people will say, I can talk, but I cannot sing. All of these are communication apprehensions. Right? And all of us have communication apprehension. Because fundamentally we know that communication is loaded with meaning. It is loaded with meaning. And we are all very apprehensive कि मैं जो कुछ भी बोल रहा हूं वो तुम्हारे वैसे ही समझ में आता है या कुछ और समझ में आता है. Right? So there is always this very big doubt that मैं बोल तो रहा हूं पर समझ में आ रहा है क्या? Right? Otherwise it is so easy, I love you, I like you, I hate you. We can say this at any point, but it is so loaded. Yes, true, Ajay, you're right. But let us just open this up a little in terms of apprehension. Why is it there? It is fundamentally there because communication has effects. Right? We want some relationship. I want some relationship with you. You want some relationship with me. It may be a relationship of hatred. मी तुझा शत्रू आहे. मला ही रिलेशनशिप पाहिजे. सो मी तुला शिव्या घालतो, तलवार घेऊन तुझ्या मागे लागतो, बंदूक घेऊन तुझ्या मागे लागतो. एंड अजय माने सेज, ओ आई लव संजय राणे. अभी ये प्रॉब्लम है ना यार, मैं पूरी कोशिश कर रहा हूं कि मैं इससे दुश्मनी करूं और ये मेरे गले में पड़ता है, बोलता है मैं तेरे से मोहब्बत करता हूं. कैसे मैनेज होगा? एंड दिस हैपेंस. या फिर आई से, ओ आई लव अजय माने, एंड व्हेनेवर आई से दैट अजय माने मुझे पत्थर मारता है, बट आई कीप सेइंग आई लव यू. प्रॉब्लम है ना कुछ, डिफिकल्टी है. This is that problem of communication, that we are looking at certain effects or we are looking at specific effects and it is not possible. ये one to one नहीं होता. ऐसा करोगे तो ऐसा होगा, ऐसा होता ही नहीं. कुछ भी हो सकता है. Which is why communication is always loaded with very high levels of anxiety. Okay, and like what you are saying, Ajay, that there are biases and dictatorship or whatever. It is because of this whole problem of communication. मैं बोल रहा हूं, तू समझेगा क्या? तू बोल रहा है लेकिन मैं वही समझ रहा हूं जो तुझे बोलना है, मैं कुछ और ही समझ रहा हूं. And all of us, you will find, it is not merely dictatorship or bias. All of us have biases and prejudices by that communication process. Some of them use that bias to their advantage, right? And some of them struggle with that bias. So some people would like to be seen or would like to have a relationship which is friendly, loving, caring. They are comfortable with this relationship. But there are some people, if you love them, वो नाखून निकालेंगे. तो तुम प्यार से उसके पास जाओगे ना, वो इतना डरा हुआ है, उसका एप्रीहेंशन इतना हो चुका है कि तुम प्यार से आ रहे हो, लेकिन उसको उसमें शक ही होता है कि ये जरूर कहीं उसने छुड़ा रखा, घूम देगा. Right? So there are people around you, I'm sure, I hope none of you is like that. Because if you're like that, you must solve that problem right away. Especially if you're in this business. कि कुछ लोग होते हैं जो नाम सुनते ही उनके कांटे खड़े हो जाते हैं. उसको बस नाम सुनाओ तुम, इसका नाम सुनाओगे वो नाखून निकालेगा. कुछ लोग होते हैं जो आवाज सुन के नाखून निकालते हैं. सो ये सारा बिहेवियर, दिस इज कम्युनिकेशन एप्रीहेंशन. Why? Because ये जो पहले हमने देखा, signs, symbols, loaded with meaning, loaded with interpretation, it is very difficult for people to deal with it. Okay, and there are experiences. So high levels of anxiety about communication, and then it inhibits a person's success in life. Right? Some people they can overcome this limitation. They can overcome धीरे धीरे करके वो इसके ऊपर overcome करके they become better people. But for some people their apprehension is constant and they cannot overcome it. They cannot. तो सिर्फ नाम भी सुन लेगा ना वो उसका, तो उसके कांटे खड़े हो जाते, वो ऐसे रोंगटे खड़े होते, एकदम नाखून निकलता हो, बिकॉज वो नहीं कर पा रहा, एडजस्ट नहीं कर पा रहा. Right? So you can see this communication apprehension. So, and media uses it, politicians use it. They use your and mine. They use our communication apprehension. So मैं इस जाति का नाम जब सुनता हूँ ना, मेरे कांटे खड़े हो जाते. मैं इस धर्म का नाम सुनता हूँ, मेरे कांटे खड़े हो जाते. मैं इस देश का नाम सुनता हूँ, ऐसा. So for instance, you could look at India, Pakistan. How many of us know anything about Pakistan or about Pakistanis? पता कुछ नहीं होता. पण पाकिस्तान म्हटलं की मुर्दाबाद. अरे कशाला धोका पडलं का तुझं? बट देन उसका ट्रेनिंग ही ऐसा, वो कम्युनिकेशन एप्रीहेंशन हो गया उसका, अभी वो उसके बाहर निकलने की कोशिश भी नहीं कर रहा और निकल ही नहीं रहा. नाउ दिस कैन बी ट्रीटेड एज नेशनलिज्म, देश प्रेम. So my communication apprehension becomes a positive thing. That I am apprehensive about anybody who calls himself or herself Pakistani. मैं उससे बात ही नहीं कर सकता. इस apprehension को मैंने नाम क्या दिया? देश प्रेम, nationalism. I love my country. So all of this, you can see this in terms of caste, you can see this in religion, in gender. सब औरतें ऐसी होती है, सब मर्द वैसे होते हैं. ये essentially at its core it is communication apprehension. उसको उधर जाके डर लग रहा है कि वो जब औरत सामने आती है ना तो इसको हिलने लगता है. तो बेस्ट थिंग इज टू से कि वो औरतें खराब ही होती, दूर ही रहो उससे. Wonderful. What he is actually expressing is communication apprehension. Okay, and it is to do with relationality. So that is what that communication apprehension is, and you will have. I'm sure that you have either experienced it or you can kind of see it around you. So there is an instrumentalist and an invitational idea to this. So communication by definition is an instrument of persuasion. So whenever we communicate, what do? What we are trying to say is, मैंने कहा ना मेरा एक ब्रह्म है, मेरी रियलिटी है. मैं तुम लोगों से कह रहा हूं कि ये है रियलिटी, ऐसा मैं कह रहा हूं क्योंकि आई एक्सपीरियंस इट ना, मेरा ब्रह्म है तो मैं एक्सप्रेस कर रहा हूं, ये है रियलिटी. मुझे आपको कन्विंस करना पड़ता है. मेरे दाहिने हाथ पर एक खिड़की है और खिड़की के बाद पेड़ है. कन्विंस करना पड़ता है. इट इज अ परसुएशन. अगर हमारा रिश्ता ऐसा है कि जहां पर अगर मैंने कहा कि मेरे दाहिने हाथ पर खिड़की है, खिड़की के बाद पेड़ है, तो तुम लोग मान लोगे हाँ होंगे. क्यों? क्योंकि हमारा रिश्ता ऐसा है. बट अगर हमारा रिश्ता ऐसा नहीं है तो तुम लोग देख, अगर ऐसा है तो वो घुमा वो कैमरा हमको दिखा, मैं देखूंगा, फिर मैं कहूंगा हाँ भाई तेरे दाहिने हाथ के बाद खिड़की, खिड़की के बाद पेड़, वरना मैं नहीं मानता. राइट? Persuasion is inherent in communication. All communication involves persuasion. Right? So imagine कि interview चल रहा है, and one of you, Asit Banage, he says, अच्छा, introduce yourself. ऐसा वो मुझे बोलता है. And I say, my name is Sanjay Ranade. And then Asit Banage says, how, कशावरून? So असं डिंपल मोरे माझा इंटरव्ह्यू घेते आणि मग डिंपल मोरे विचारताना मला हा सांगा तुम ओळख द्या कोण आहात. माझं नाव संजय राणे. सो डिंपल मोरे जे हा कशावरून, आता काय उत्तर देणार मी, कशावरून? मग मी सांगेन नाही ते बघा ते माझ्या 10वीच्या सर्टिफिकेट मध्ये तसंच आहे. असेल ना, म्हणून तू संजय रानडे कशावरून, तर कसं काय उत्तर द्यायचं? माय कम्युनिकेशन हॅज फेल्ड. आय एम नॉट एबल टू परसुएड हर की आय एम संजय रानडे. एंड इफ इला कौशिक और अनुष्का एलेक्स, इफ यू डिसाइड की हम नहीं मानते दैट यू आर संजय रानडे, आता कसं कन्व्हिन्स करायचं? राइट? इट इज बिकॉज ऑफ अ रिलेशनशिप that when you say what is your name and I say Sanjay Ranade, you say ha okay, go ahead. Because the relationship is where you say, if I say I'm Sanjay Ranade, you're willing to accept it. What did I do? I persuaded you to believing that I am Sanjay Ranade. That is what I persuaded you. Right? So understand that communication is an instrument of persuasion. But then all persuasion is inherently coercive. Right? जबरदस्ती है ना ती. मी सांगतोय ना मी संजय रानडे, आता जर तुम्ही मान्यच नाही केलं, इफ यू से ना यू आर नॉट संजय, अभी तो खेल चलता ही रहेगा, फिर दिस इंटरव्यू कैन गो ऑन फॉर गॉड नोज हाउ लॉन्ग. राइट? इनहेरेंटली परसुएशन इन्वॉल्व्स कोअर्शन. तुम मानो तो मैं चला जाऊंगा. राइट? तो इफ यू से नहीं यू कन्विंस मी यू आर संजय रानडे, अदरवाइज विल थ्रो यू आउट, आई हैव टू फाइट दिस आउट. बिकॉज इट इज इनहेरेंटली कोअर्सिव. And all coercion is inherently unethical. कुठल्याही प्रकारची जबाबदारी जबरदस्ती दुसऱ्यावर करणं हे अनैतिक आहे. राइट? सो इफ coercion is unethical, all persuasion is coercive, and all communication is persuasive, then all communication is unethical. Correct? Do you agree with that? This is the problem with relationality. How do we come to terms with this? Does the mass media communication, therefore, is it unethical? And you will find a lot of people complaining about mass media. हे काय पण सांगतात, हे नीट सांगत नाहीत, माझ्याबद्दल सांगत नाहीत, त्यांच्याच बद्दल सांगतात. एव्हरीबडी थिंक्स लाईक दिस. if you look at the mass media and the people's complaint about mass media, न्यूज मीडिया के बारे में लोगों का कंप्लेंट क्या होता है, फिल्मों के बारे में लोगों की कंप्लेंट क्या होती है, कुछ ही बताते, हमारे बारे में नहीं बताते, उनके बारे में बताते। अब जब उनको जाकर पूछोगे तो वो भी यही कहेंगे, उनके बारे में बता रहे। अगर मास मीडिया किसी और के बारे में बता रहा है, मेरे बारे में बता ही नहीं रहा, तो तू बंद करना बे, पेपर मत पढ़, टीवी मत देख, फिल्में मत देखना, तू अपना काम कर। देखूंगा और कंप्लेंट भी यही करूंगा, मेरे बारे में नहीं बोलते, उनके बारे में बोलते, मेरे बारे में बुरा बोलते, उन्हीं के बारे में अच्छा बोलते। ऐसा समाज का हर तबका कहता है ना, सब हर तबका कहता है कि मास मीडिया उनके बारे में सच नहीं बताता, राइट, उनके बारे में बोलता है, मेरे बारे में सच नहीं बताता, मेरे बारे में नहीं बोलता है। ऐसा सब मास मीडिया के बारे में सब लोग बोलते, कोई भी ऐसा तुमको नजर नहीं आएगा जो कहेगा मास मीडिया मेरा रिप्रेजेंटेशन बढ़िया करता है, आई एम हैप्पी, आई हैव नो कंप्लेंट्स, नो, एवरीबडी कंप्लेंट, डेमोक्रेट्स, रिपब्लिक्स, भाजपा वाले, कांग्रेस वाले, सेना वाले, एनसीपी वाले, लेफ्टिस्ट, राइटिस्ट, सब कंप्लेंट करते हैं, तो मास मीडिया बराबर नहीं दिखाता। ओके, it is because of this very interesting problem that communication is an instrument of persuasion. Persuasion is inherently coercive and all coercion is inherently unethical. Okay, so are you studying this? Maybe in your research you're studying something like this. Okay, so therefore techniques of risk communication, they appropriate, adapt to particular relational dynamics, and I think I did describe with you. जब एक टीचर तुमसे कहता है अरे बेटा ये बेटा ऐसा कर दे, वो टीचर एक रिलेशनशिप को बदल के दूसरी रिलेशनशिप तैयार कर रहा है, राइट। तुम स्टूडेंट हो, मैं टीचर हूं, मेरा काम तुमको पढ़ाना है, मैं तुम्हारा बाप नहीं हूं, राइट, लेकिन मैं तुमको बेटा कह रहा हूं, बेटी कह रहा हूं, बच्चा कह रहा हूं, अरे छोटे, ऐसा कुछ बुला रहा हूं। What I'm doing here is that by interpolating Louis Althusser, by interpolating I'm changing the dynamics. To whose advantage? अगर तुम में से मैंने असित बनर्जे को कहा अरे बेटा, सो असित बनर्जे ने कहा कि इधर आओ, पैर पड़ता हूं तुम्हारे, अब तेरी प्रॉपर्टी में 10% हिस्सा दे, बेटा हूं ना तुम्हारा, देगा क्या वो? नहीं देगा। सो इज इट टू योर एडवांटेज और इज इट टू माई एडवांटेज? सिमिलरली वो जो सेल्समैन है, वो सेल्समैन जब तक आपको बेच रहा है कोई चीज तब तक ठीक है, लेकिन जैसे ही वो सेल्समैन कहता है कि मैं आपके बच्चे जैसा हूं, आप मेरे बाप जैसे, या
पीएचडी ऍडमिशन साठी जर्नलिझम, कम्युनिकेशन जर्नलिझम ऍडमिशनचे आता काय चालू प्रोसिजर काय असं काय करायचं?
there are no vacancies, we don't have guides.
What is the procedure there?
There is no procedure. Unless there is a guide, how can you have a PhD?
म्हणजे या फील्ड मध्ये नाही काही
आमच्या डिपार्टमेंटला नाही,
कॅपेबल कुठेच नाही,
डिपार्टमेंटला कसं
नाही
शकतो?
प्रॉब्लेम काय व्हॉट इज द नेक्स्ट?
You wait till there is a guide.
सो ऍडमिशन मध्ये ती गेट
गाइडच नसेल तर ऍडमिट कसं होणार ना?
So how we know that the guide is available? What is some procedure is there? Actually, we can fill the form and once the guide is available, then
तुम्हाला कळलेलंच नाहीये पीएचडी म्हणजे काय, तुम्हाला तो एक कागदाचा तुकडा वाटतोय। तसं जर असेल ना तर माय ऍडवाइस विल बी एखाद्या प्रायव्हेट युनिव्हर्सिटीमध्ये पटकन करून टाका। मग त्याला माहित नाहीये रिसर्च म्हणजे काय आणि पीएचडी म्हणजे काय, त्याला म्हणा उगाच फालतू वेळ घालवू नको, कुठल्या तरी प्रायव्हेट युनिव्हर्सिटीमध्ये जा, पटकन ते पैसे द्या आणि फिनिश करा, कारण त्याला याच्यातलं काहीच कळलेलं नाही। त्याने तुम्हाला ज्या अर्थी पाठवलं ना त्या अर्थी त्याला याच्यातलं काय कळलं, त्याला माहितच नाही काय, त्याला एक कागदाचा तुकडा हवाय, तर तो इथे किती वेळ राहू शकतो त्याच्यात काही फरक नाही पडणार। ही डझंट नो व्हॉट रिसर्च इज, आणि पीएचडी काय असतं त्याला माहित नाही। So when we look at this, when we talk of selling cars, right? As long as that person stays at that physical distance or like that, What that person is doing is, I'm a salesman, you are the customer, I have to convince you, persuade you. So my communication will be to persuade you to buy a car. Right? I'm selling, clear relationship. Hai. So you know that I'm persuading you, right? And you have to now defend yourself. If my arguments are getting very strong, you will end up buying a car which you don't want. असं होऊ शकतं. I don't know if any one of you has ever gone through this experience where you went to some place and that just because of that salesman, तुमको वो नहीं चाहिए था, वो जो कुछ भी बेच रहा था तुमको नहीं चाहिए था, but because of the way that man or woman spoke to you, etc., you end up buying something completely useless. Okay, if it has happened to me many times. मेरे शायद मेरे दिखा हुआ है यहाँ पे. So वो देख मुझे देख के पता उनको पता चाहिए बेवकूफ आदमी ये फंसेगा. And then they come and they sell something to me, and it is completely useless. It is of no use to me. So my defense system, my defense mechanism is, I either take my wife or my daughter and then I say, बेटा ये देख तो जरा ये लग रहा है तुझे ये. Then I say yes, okay. Otherwise I don't go because मुझे पता कि मैं फंस जाऊँगा. So if you have gone through that experience, you will find that there are some salesmen who, and this was a proper technique which was taught in marketing. ये पढ़ाया जाता है that you have to physically move in a direction which aligns to the customer. So normal position क्या है? I am the salesman, you are the customer. It is a confrontational position. मैं इधर खड़ा हूँ, तुम सामने खड़े हो और मैं तुमको बेच रहा हूँ. धीरे बोलते 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 वो तुम्हारी तरफ आएगा, मानो तुम्हारा दोस्त है. So the physical positioning is where मैं तो तुम्हारे दोस्त की तरह बता रहा हूँ, right? So your interest and my interest are the same. Your perspective, my perspective are the same. तुम जो करना चाहते हो मैं भी वही करना चाहता हूँ. I am only helping you. This is the position that person takes. Is that ethical? Because now that person has changed the dynamics of the relationship by communication, right? Because one relationship is overlaid by another. Like I told you about the teacher who calls you beta or whatever, right? This is that critical aspect which you need to begin to understand. Does the media do this? The media does this. Why else do you think? Now think, why are television anchors dressing in a particular way? And what is that way? किस तरह वो लोग कपड़े पहनते हैं? तरह कौन से रंग पहनते हैं? ऐसे ही रंग क्यों पहनते हैं? ऐसे ही क्यों खड़े होते हैं? What is this mechanism? Right? And you will find it across. वो मराठी एंकर हो, हिंदी हो, तमिल हो, गुजराती हो, कुछ भी हो, वो एक जैसा करते हैं. क्यों? और ये ट्रेनिंग कहाँ से आया? कहाँ से ये उनका टेलीविजन एंकर्स का ये ट्रेनिंग कहाँ से आया कि इस तरह कपड़े पहनो, इस तरह बोलो, या इस तरह हाथ करो, या इस तरह, ये कहाँ से आया? One of the very important ways in which this happened was from anchors giving weather reports. Okay, two kinds of anchors have influenced the clothing, the standing, the communication symbolism of anchors. One is weather reports and the other is sports anchors. So there are a lot of studies on this. You can Google it, you will find it. What they do is that they change the dimension. I am with you. I am your man here. तुम्हारा आदमी हूं. This is what they represent and this is what they do with those clothes and with that manner of speaking. Okay, that is what that relationality is. Therefore, one cannot not persuade. So one is persuading all the time. Okay, there is nothing which a person does which is not persuading. One cannot not persuade. They persuade all the time. The line got disconnected. All right. So this is what that whole question of communication as this thing is. So now we will stop here for today, and let me know if you want to, if anyone wants to discuss their review of literature. Yeah, and we can take it further. So anybody wants to discuss your literature, review of literature today, tell me the topic and we will yeah. So what are your discussion and what are your topics? Otherwise, what we will do is that we will stop for today, then you make an Excel sheet, and on the basis of the Excel sheet, give me the whole thing. Yeah, so we can discuss it for everyone. Which one do you prefer? Yet to be finalized. But you are already in January. अभी क्या finalize कर रहे हो?
So there was a meeting to be held by the HOD, but it did not happen. So it will happen very soon. So then that will be finalizing the topics we have written on the sheet.
Okay, there is an somebody said there is an Excel sheet with the topics, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. So do one thing: share that Excel sheet with me, and we'll start, working on them. See, ultimately, it is a question of whether it is doable.
Yes, sir.
That's all. So it is not as if I'm going to finalize, somebody is going to finalize. You are going to finalize the topic.
Yes, sir.
So just share that Excel sheet with me, right?
Okay, sir.
And from tomorrow, I'll tell you on the group whose topics we will discuss tomorrow. And from tomorrow, we'll start working on the review literature.
Done, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay? All right. So just share that thing with me, the Excel sheet, and we'll start discussing tomorrow, and we'll go fatapat khatam kar dete. Because otherwise it will take unnecessary time for you, which is quite a waste. And I'll tell you one of my apprehensions. One of my apprehensions is that now I've started coming to the department from today again. But my apprehension is that if they suddenly say that students have to start coming for one semester, I think it is unfair. Wherever you are, and then you will come here, and then you will stay here. I don't know what you will do. So as far as my subject is concerned and the dissertation where my part is concerned, I feel that we should just finish it off so that if the university says, come here, you can always say, Hamara to ho gaya. As simple as that. So I want to finish this at as fast as possible. Okay. So just send me that list of topics. We'll start working on them from tomorrow. Yeah. All right. So then we'll stop here today because there's no point in going on this because you will forget all this. So I'll share all the research, whatever I have with you, and I'll share the presentation and the book itself so you can start following it. Yeah? All right. So see you tomorrow then. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.